Hey guys, and welcome back to the official Sourcing with Kian YouTube channel. So you want to avoid the biggest mistakes that sellers make when sourcing products from China? Well, this is the video for you. Hey guys, and welcome back to the official Sourcing with Kian YouTube channel. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and tap the bell to turn on post notifications so you can stay up to date on the latest of what's going on in China. Today I've got a very special episode for you guys. It's a lot of mistakes that people have made when sourcing products from China, and these are the mistakes made by beginners, intermediate and advanced, and these are mistakes either I've made or Amazon seller my friends have made, or people have just approached me to say, hey, can you help me fix this mistake? So I've kind of summarized it all into one episode for you. This was an episode on the Seller Sessions podcast I did with my good friend Sharon Evan, and we take a deep dive into it. We share some cool stories. So there's definitely going to be a lot of gems in here to unpack that you can apply to your business today. So without further ado, let's jump into it.
Welcome to Seller Sessions. I am your host today, Sharon Evan, and I have my bestie, the king of sourcing with King, I should say, King Golzari.
Hey, what's up? How's it going, Sharon? Hope you're good. Thanks for having me back on the show. Hope everyone's doing fine today. Nice to see you all.
You guys that are listening to us that are not seeing this can't see, but Ken has the most pimped out hoodie on today. Ken, tell everyone about your hoodie.
I don't know how to describe it. It's like
neither do I. It's like a holographic type of.
It's like a camel spray of like purple and pink with a holographic Jordan PSG logo.
It looks amazing. I can't stop looking at it. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that. Kian, for the people that don't know you, which is literally and legitimately nobody in this world, can you give a brief introduction to who you are and how amazing you are, please?
Yes. How you doing, guys? Hope you're well. My name is Kian Golzari, and I have been living and working in China for the past 11 years, manufactured over 2,500 products, visited more than 500 factories, and attended more than 20 Canton fairs, 2 online Canton fairs as well. Third one coming up soon. That has led me to work with brands such as the NBA, Olympics, United Nations, a lot of big box retailers in the UK, Europe, and the US. As well as helping Amazon private label sellers as well. So happy to answer any sort of questions regarding sourcing, product development, manufacturing, pricing, logistics, negotiation, quality control, all that sort of fun stuff. So yeah, happy to be back on the show, and that's my game.
I love it. Yeah, I feel like you haven't been. I'm like so used to you being on the show every freaking month. I'm sorry that you weren't on like a week ago. Anyway, yeah, homie, I'm so happy. So happy you're here because I'm really passionate about our talk today, because today we're going to be speaking about the biggest mistakes that we have seen sellers and in general, because you don't only work with Amazon sellers, you work with many different types of people that are producing products. So we're going to be talking about the biggest mistakes that we see importers, exporting out of China, making in China and in Asia in general. So yeah, you and I both work with people on a one-on-one level, and sometimes, and we're also good friends. So sometimes we talk about, oh, I had a client that like didn't do this, and and this happened. So we're going to turn it into a show. So
perfect. We're not going to name anyone though.
We will not name anyone. And we're turning this into a show because we want to help people to avoid these types of mistakes. We want to help people to, make sure that they know not to make these mistakes. So we have together made, a bit of a list of things that we want to talk about. So Kian, can you please tell us what is the first biggest mistake that you see people making when exporting out of China or importing into America?
Sure. Let me kick it off, right? So I would say the number one biggest mistake that I've seen is the seller outgrowing their supplier. And what I mean by that is that, whenever anyone gets started in this game, whether it's your first order, the first time dealing with a supplier, you'll go for like a low MOQ, something like that. You might not find the best supplier, but you'll find a supplier that's willing to work with you. And, your first order might be like, 300 units, not really a good price. But then as you grow and scale your business, shortly 6 months later or a year later, you get to a stage where you're doing 1,000 units a month, stuff like that. And I see a lot of people missing the opportunity to go back and negotiate with their supplier to get the price that they deserve based on the quantity that they're now producing. Or they have much better suppliers out there for them, which have now got much better economies of scale. Maybe they do in-house testing, maybe they have better access to raw materials, maybe they supply retailers, so they make this product on a much larger scale, and they're not able to get the benefits of how big they've grown their business in a short space of time by sticking with the existing supplier. Now, I'm not suggesting that we all switch our suppliers, because I very much like, building with a supplier. But when you initially found your supplier, if you didn't find the right one, if you were working with a middleman, or if you were working with a poor trading company, then you need to get out of that situation and align with the factory that best fits your purpose and your core values moving forward. And then you can benefit from not only a better price, but better quality, which will lead to less returns, better reviews, and things like that. So I think that it's an exercise for everyone to really analyze their business, after 6 months, after a year, once you start to see significant growth, and decide, okay, am I really getting the best price here? Am I really working with the best factory? Are they really giving me the best lead times? And then, if you want to assess that for yourself, make a specification sheet of the item that you're producing, send that out to multiple suppliers, and just see what is the feedback that you get from other suppliers for the price and the volume that you're doing. And if you don't want to leave your current supplier, then just go back to your existing supplier and negotiate and say, hey, I'm paying $8 to you right now, but other suppliers are offering me $6.70, $6.90. So I need you to match that price in order for us to continue to do the business together. And if you can't, then I have to move on. But I want to give you the opportunity first to see if you can match it. And that way you will maintain your relationship with your existing supplier if they're a good one, but also get the price that you deserve for the level that you're at.
I think that's a really, really great tip, because a lot of the times when we first starting out, and you and I have both also said to people in the past that you also, one of your questions when you're deciding on a supplier should also be, how big they are. Because when you're just starting out, you don't necessarily want to straight away go and work with a supplier that has, 500 employees, because sometimes they won't even want to look at you because you're, only ordering 100, 200, 300 units at a time. But maybe 6 months to a year from now, God willing, you've had good sales, you suddenly can work with them, and reevaluating your situation and sort of, doing that. I think it's really smart. I like the fact that you said you're not necessarily telling people to leave their suppliers, because it's, we do want people to build, and we all want to build relationship with our suppliers. But I think that's an amazing tip and an important one to reevaluate. Halfway through, right?
Thank you. What would you say is the second biggest mistake that you've seen amongst sellers?
So my biggest mistake that I've seen, and I'm really passionate about this, and how passionate I am about this subject, is that hold on, you can hear an echo from when I speak?
When I was speaking, I heard a little bit of an echo. I could hear myself with like a 1 second delay. I wasn't sure if it was coming from my mic or if it was in the background there.
I'll send Danny a message and ask if he can hear it too. Thank you for that. My biggest mistake when I am working with people is that I see that people don't get inspections done. So, there's a lot of different types of inspections that people, have, which could be a factory audit, but I'm specifically talking about a pre-shipment inspection. So a lot of the times people will have, a seller will build a really good relationship with their supplier, and then they're about to go out of stock. And they're like, oh, I just don't have time. I know the supplier. I've never had a problem before. And I'm speed to market right now is really important. And this one day of me committing to an inspection is one more day I have to wait. I'm just not going to have an inspection done. And then boom, on that specific time is when, the factory has, every factory, even the best factories in the world, will sometimes fuck up. And when they do, and you didn't get an inspection done, you won't know about it. And that can cost you, I'm literally saying thousands of dollars, because it's enough that you've had 5, 10, 1-star reviews that it's basically stuffed up, your sales, right? So that's number one. Number two, I think that in general, a lot of especially newbies don't understand how important quality control is. So they don't, even think about getting an inspection done, or they don't know about getting an inspection. And the next thing is also that with inspections, and you and I have spoken about this in the past, I think that also working with the right inspection company is really important, because one of the biggest things when it comes to inspections in China is bribery. So a lot of the inspectors will be bribed. And I know that you don't always agree on this. I think I can see you smiling, but this is my experience. It's actually a really well-known fact, but it's my experience with bribery is a huge thing where, the inspector will get paid off and then they will write off and say that whatever whatever issue is never happened. And it's a problem. So I think it's really important to make sure that you're working with a reputable inspection company, ideally with an inspection company that only does inspection, that they don't try and do a million other things. That's what they do. They're a third-party inspection company. And yeah, what do you have to say about that? Because I could see you smiling.
Yeah, 100% agree with the whole inspection. And it's like, I think a misconception is that, okay, once I've done like 5 or 6 orders with my supplier, I've done the inspections a few times. Now I don't need to do inspections anymore because the trust is built up. But, quite often inspection is not done because of a lack of trust. It's to avoid potential mistakes happening. And as you said, like suppliers, even the best suppliers in the world can make mistakes, and it's not intentional. It's not to screw you on price or anything like that. It's just a genuine mistake happened. And I'll give you a quick example. Like I was doing military boots, right? And these military boots are black leather, and they use a silver pen to draw on the leather where they need to cut the leather to then, stitch onto the boot, right? And for whatever reason, we were doing like 2 40-foot high cube containers of military boots. And the guy who's doing the QC, the last check before they get packed and put into the box, was not working that day, was not replaced for whatever reason. I don't know. I wasn't in the factory, but that guy was not there, or someone did not do their job that day. And what happened was that we received these boots to the UK, and a lot of these black polished, they're supposed to be like, gleamy boots, had like silver marks on it. And no retailer wants to put that out in the store. If any customer buys that, it's a return. And for what? A pre-shipment inspection that costs $200 for 2 high cube containers of a $50 boot could have been saved, because someone would have noticed that in the inspection, and we would have said, no, before you ship this, these all need to be wiped off. And then what ended up happening is that every box had to be opened in the UK. We had to employ someone to polish, get rid of these marks. Imagine the labor cost in the UK compared to China. That could have been easily solved in China. And that wasn't a deliberate mistake by the supplier. It was a genuine mistake that went unnoticed, but an inspection would have picked that up and it would have saved thousands of dollars. So for that reason, we should always be doing inspections. And as you said, with a reputable company as well. We could talk about the whole bribery thing as well, but it's
the what thing?
The bribery thing. Do you want to hear my take on it?
Yeah, and then after that, I just want to share a personal story that I have with inspections. So yeah, go for it.
Sure. With the whole bribery thing, like I wouldn't read too much into it, because it's part of the culture, right? And it's as the most important thing is that we get an accurate inspection report, whether there was a bribe or not, whether there was cash exchanged or not. You want that report to be accurate. If your inspection was a fail, you want the report to say it was a fail. If it was a pass, you want to know it was a pass, and for what reasons, right? But if they exchange cash for whatever reason, then that's just to do with them. And I've seen it before, and I was like, oh, this is not right. We shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be using this company. And then I noticed other companies doing it, and I was like, hey, like if that's what they want to do internally, that's between them. It's none of my business. It's only my business if my inspection report is not right. But so far, all the inspection reports I've received are correct. So I'm like, let it be. But if you use the lower quality inspection companies, I don't want to name and shame, but if there's like Chinese inspection companies, which we've not heard of before, and the inspections are like $70 rather than like $200, they're way more likely to do something like that. And I have had a couple of people come to me to say, hey, I had some faults on my inspection report, but it wasn't that serious. And then when I got the stock, it was very serious. But you can't sue like an inspection company, which is not a global international company with offices, in the US, Europe, wherever you may be. They just have a small office in China. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to sue them in China for falsifying a report? for $70. Like, impossible. So it's very important to work with global reputable companies.
Catherine Lambert said, do you recommend inspecting every item every time or random picks? So you can answer or I can answer, whichever you decide.
Yeah, I would say just leave it to the inspection company, because normally when you pay for an inspection, you're paying for one, they call it one man day, which is essentially one full day's work. And based on the quantity of your order, whether it's 500 units or 5,000 units, they will tell you how many units they can inspect in one day. And then it's up to you to decide, okay, is that enough? Because that one day, depending on the size of your order, might be 10% of the stock, it might be 25% of the stock, or it might be 3% of the stock. So you definitely don't need to check every single item, but it's very, very important that they select from random, which they do. So when they go in to do the inspection, they'll pick from box number 3, box number 13, box number 37. It's not just, hey, open one box, check the samples. Oh yeah, they're fine, close the box. All right, the shipment's good to go. Like, it's completely random. And then if you get the test report back and you're happy with it and it's a pass, then cool. But if they say, oh, this failed on a minor level, maybe dust marks here, then you might say, okay, now I want you to go and re-inspect a larger quantity because I want to dig into this a little bit further. So you can take the first test report to decide what you want to do with the remaining stock if you're uncomfortable with anything you see in the report.
Yeah, what I would say, Catherine, is to Google AQL standards, and then you can sort of get a good picture. Kian actually was on seller sessions sometime last year together with myself. We actually did an inspection podcast. I don't know if you remember that. So you can also go to seller sessions and search for inspections. And Kian and I went in depth into AQL. So, because I think it's enough about inspections for now. So
yeah, it's quite a lengthy topic.
I agree with everything you just said. Stuart just said as well, hold on. Yep, I know all about this right now. He is referring to the fact that I had to remove all of my stock. Mm-hmm. And Athena said, oh my gosh, the one and only Kangol Zari. Woohoo!
That's a good one.
Cool. So Kian, do you want to tell us about the third biggest mistake that you and I see sellers making?
Yeah, sure. It's kind of like a continuation on from inspections, but it's now we're talking about product testing, because a pre-shipment inspection is to check the shipment is okay before it actually ships out. But even before that, you want to make sure you're getting your product testing done, basically compliance, right? And this is such an important topic as well, but we won't dive too deep into it because we've already covered sort of compliance a little bit with pre-shipment stuff. But essentially anything that you import into the US, UK, or wherever you're importing it to, you want to double check that you are compliant to the industry standards and the legal standards of that product. So for example, if you're importing a power bank, there's a legal standard to that, you know, the power bank doesn't overheat if it's been charged for 12 hours. It doesn't blow up after like the first minute of you charging it. So there are legal tests that you have to do. So if you do not have that testing certificate, and remember, you always ask your manufacturer, like, hey, have you done this testing certificate? Can you show me it? Because you want to see that they're capable of passing. But once they're capable of passing and you see the certificate, remember that's with the supplier's brand name or another client that they may have. You still have to get that certificate with your brand name, so that when you bring your goods into Amazon or import it to whatever retailer that you're supplying, and they say, hey, let me see your compliance documents, you have it with your brand name and then you're compliant. So you always want to be asking the supplier for the test certificates. And once you have that information, you also want to verify that with a third party, similar to the third parties that we were talking about before. Intertech, SGS, these types of companies, you can say, hey, I'm importing these power banks from China to the US. Can you let me know what are my legal requirements I have to be compliant with in order to import these products? And they'll say, yeah, sure, you have to do CE 4972, and they'll list all the certificates, they'll list all the prices, and you're like, okay, cool, go for it. And then you get testing done. You can get the testing done in the US in your home market, or you can get it done in China as well. And then once you have that certificate, you can sleep at night knowing that your goods are safe.
Also, it's not only just compliant with product, it's also compliant with the packaging, which is something that a lot of people forget about. Even like Europe, importing into Europe and importing into America, there's different standards of packaging as well. So that is a very important tip. And I'm sure that you have also seen a lot of people not, you know, like bring a product, be like, oh, I'm about to import it. And then, you know, they'll come to the freight forwarder and the freight forwarder will be like, okay, I just need, you know, the certificate so we can get past customs. And then past customs. And they're like, what? What are you talking about? You know, what certificate? So yeah, that's actually a huge mistake that a lot of people make, and an important one. Yeah. Should we move on to the next one?
Sure.
The next one. So the next one is not understanding payment terms. So each of us will probably put our 2 cents on this. So for me, the biggest mistake that I see people make in terms of payment terms is sometimes, this is mostly for newbies, and then you're probably going to add things as well. I've seen a lot of newbies that don't really understand when it comes to how to work with the suppliers. A supplier may be like, well, we need 100% upfront. And they're like, okay. And, you know, they'll go in and give them 100% upfront, leaving them absolutely no leverage. There are so many also scammy, you know, people out there that aren't actually suppliers, that they pretend to be, and they take that money and run away, especially if it's been through, you know, a wire transfer or whatever it may be on the first payment. Now, it doesn't mean that there can't sometimes be a time where a supplier will need. It's very rare that a supplier will need 100% upfront. Very, very rare. I have seen it happen in the past by suppliers who have been legit, and it's literally just because of the raw materials. But like very, very rare that I've seen that. In my experience, most of the payment terms are usually 30 upfront, 70 before shipment. Sometimes it can be 50 upfront and 50 before shipment. It really does depend. And yeah, that's one of the biggest mistakes that I see people doing, is that they will not know this, and they'll pay way too much upfront, leaving them literally with zero leverage if anything goes wrong. So can you tell us a little bit about your 2 cents on payment terms mistakes?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I would say, yeah, the standard terms that everyone should be aiming for, like for your first order, should be 30% deposit and then 70% once the goods are on water and they've been shipped out, right? But it's so important that you do not pay a deposit until you receive a sample in your hand that you're happy with to go into production with, your pre-production sample. Because you receive that sample, you're like, right, I confirm this item. Now here is my deposit. Go ahead and start the production. But I've seen a lot of sellers like actually just pay a deposit without seeing a sample. What happens if the sample you get is totally shit? Then you're stuck. Okay. You've lost your deposit. So, and it's not only, as you said, like I've seen some sellers pay 50% deposit without even confirming a sample. And to me, like that's just absolutely crazy. So it's really, really important, one, to confirm the sample, and then two, after that, pay your deposit. But you pay the 70% balance once you have proof that those goods are on water. Once it's been on a container and that container is sealed, the freight forwarder creates a bill of lading document, and the supplier gets that. And once the supplier shows you a copy of the bill of lading document and says, here, your goods are on water, here's a copy of the documents, then you can pay the remaining balance. However, if you are shipping your balance by air, they have to receive the payment for you before it goes out, because once it's handed over to a courier, like a FedEx or a DHL or a UPS or someone like that, it doesn't matter like who owns that bill of lading document. It's just going to your door. So they're not going to release it to go by air unless they've had their balance. So you can pay the remaining 70% balance before it ships out if it's going by air, but if it's going by sea, wait for it to be on water before you pay for anything.
Also, you only get to a situation where you've paid a supplier once you've vetted them, right? Mm-hmm. So I didn't say that earlier as well. Like, of course, you only put that 30% once. That's, you vetted them. You know, you've got the sample, but you've done all your other checkups. If you've needed to do a factory audit, you've done it. Like, the last thing you do is when you've gone through it, and also you've got the purchase order in place. All the terms are, you know, agreed upon up front, and only then you pay the 30%. So yeah, that's some great tips there.
For sure.
We have Nirav saying here, packaging regulations, what to write on the package and what is allowed. I don't know if that's a question or if that's a...
I'll just say really quick, like for anyone who's sort of like unsure what to include on their packaging, right? Maybe you're doing a product that you've never done before. either in pets or baby or electronics or whatever, and you're like, I don't know what to put here. The best thing I would advise you to do is to go to a retail store and pick up a product that you want to import. So if it's an electronics product and you're in the US, go to Best Buy, find also that charger and read the back to see what compliance they're putting on their packaging. And if they have tested for any certificates, they'll put the code on the packaging. So then you can sort of read that. And obviously, if it's like a textile item, go to your Walmart or Target, read the labels. Like when I started importing products into the US for retailers, for example, like sleeping bags, I didn't know. And I asked the supplier and they told me, but I need to check for myself as well. So I went to all these supermarkets, I read all the labels, I took pictures of all the labels. If there was a code that I didn't understand, I Googled that code, then I found the source of who supplies that code, and then I talked to them. So you can really do a lot of self-education by finding the products in retail stores of reputable retail stores like your Walmarts and Targets and retailers like that, because they have to be compliant with the latest standards anyway. And then you can educate yourself a lot from what's printed on the packaging and the labels of the product.
There are some things that's a great tip, by the way, Kian.
Thank you.
Because I know you so well. I know your tips already. I feel like I could be like you. I could already read your mind in advance.
Hey guys, if you are getting value from this video, I would greatly appreciate if you could smash that like button for me real quick. If you do smash that like button, that will guarantee that you will never make any of the mistakes that talked about in this video ever again. Now, without further ado, let's get back to it.
Kian, what would you say is our next biggest mistake that we see people make?
Sure, I would, and this could be like a mistake or an advantage, but it's an important talking point, and I feel it's like fully understanding molds. Because molds are required like for a lot of different products, whether it's like plastic, metal, whatever. If it's a custom shape that's going on a zip or a buckle or something like that, a mold needs to be created. Or if you're adding your logo onto an accessory, they need to create a mold for that. And quite often I get questions like, oh, hey, the supplier wants me to pay like 5K for this mold. Is it worth it? And I'm just like, well, let's talk about it, because there's a few important things we need to clarify with molds, right? Molds can cost like $500, $2,000, $10,000, $100,000, depending on what it is that they're creating, right? What's the function, what's the utility? So the first thing to consider is like the mold fee, right? And I would say that with the mold fee, you can either pay it yourself, you can ask the supplier to pay it, or you can pay it in partnership. Now, if you pay it yourself, bear in mind that you own that mold, so they can't sell it to anyone else. But if your supplier pays for the mold, then they can also sell this product that they create from this mold to your competitors as well. Or you can decide to split the mold fee 50-50 and come up with an agreement yourself. What I like to do is pay for the mold upfront. So let's say the mold cost is $5,000. I'll be like, okay, I'll pay the $5,000 for the mold. However, once I order 1,000 units, I need you to refund me 10% of the mold cost. Once I order 5,000 units, I need to refund me 50% of the mold cost. And once I order 10,000 units, I need you to refund me 100% of the mold cost. And the supplier is happy with that because they don't mind to pay for the mold if they get an order for 10,000 units. And then if you made that first order and you never ordered from them again, then it's okay as well, because the supplier never paid for the mold. And then you know that you envision selling this product in larger quantities. You get your money back once you've ordered X quantity. So that's important. The other thing is that what is the life cycle of the mold? Because molds wear out. So before you spend 5K, 20K on a mold, you want to figure out how many units can actually produce with this mold. Like, is it going to like fail after 3 years? Is it going to fail after 100,000 pieces? If it's 20K to set up and I get 100,000 pieces out of it, then you can calculate how much it's going to cost you per unit. So always ask what is the life cycle of the mold. The other thing is you want to have an agreement with the factory in writing, or even like a proper contract, like an NNN agreement, if it's something innovative. Like if it's just like a slight design tweak that you're like, okay, cool, like everyone's got their own variation, doesn't really matter if I get copied here, then no need. But if it's something of real innovation, which is creates a utility that no other product does, then definitely get an agreement on that mold as well, and let them know they can't share it with anyone else. And also, if you want to prevent anyone from using it, then make sure you get your logo put inside the mold. Now, for example, if you are doing like some custom buckle or zipper or something like that, and your logo is like the Nike logo, for example, then put the Nike tick on the actual mold so that Nike tick will appear on every product. So if Adidas came along and they were like, hey, I want to use this mold as well, when they print it, the Nike logo comes out of it. So it's things like that. Always add your logo into the mold if it's something that you've designed yourself as well. And then the final thing is that, like, mold or no mold, if you have something of innovation, just like having an agreement for the mold is not going to protect you enough as well. because a competitor could buy your product, send it to another factory, and that factory could make a mold based on this product as well. So if you have something of real innovation, you basically want to get your product patent protected, whether it's a design patent or a utility patent, in the market that you're selling in. And in that way, you're protected if anyone ever copies you as well.
Or in China as well. You can also get a patent in China, which is even, I think, a must if you've really invented something. Those are really, really great tips. The only thing I would add to what you said, which was a lot of great tips, would be a lot of people, if you're really innovating a product, meaning you have designed it from scratch, or you've made a really, really big change to the product, right? Before you go and pay, because like you said, molds can be really expensive, and molds can be, $2,000. I've paid for $200 for a mold for a small product in the past. And then there's molds that are $25K. Now, before you go and pay for a $25K mold, have some sort of proof of concept first. So I had a couple of weeks ago, we did a show on 3D printing, right? Which is like my new favorite thing right now. And anyway, I had on there he's an engineer, his name's Nick Relation, and he and his wife invented this product where their mold is $12,000. And before they went to China to pay for this mold, what they did is they 3D printed their first product for proof of concept, sold it on Amazon as a 3D printed product, and then they got feedback, and there were fuck ups with the product. So they knew what else they needed. And he's an engineer. He invented, he actually made the CAD work. He did everything for the product. And then he went and made changes, and then put the new version up on Amazon, and there were some other fuck ups with the product. So it took about 3 runs until they got the final product perfect. Imagine if they went and had to do that and pay, 3 times $12,000 every single time for a new mold. So some sort of proof of concept before, especially today when 3D printing exists and it's so easy to get your product 3D printed, before you go and you get your mold. I think that's another good idea. If you're really innovated something, if it's something that's not really innovative and it's literally just you're putting your logo on and a tiny little change, maybe not. But I do think that if it's something that is highly differentiated on a design level, that is something that people should think about. Because if you do go and spend all that money on a mold straight away, and and there's an issue with it, you're gonna need a new mold. So I feel like there was one more thing that I wanted to say about the molds, but I can't remember now. So you
covered quite a lot there anyway. So
yeah, I will just say we've got some people here. Yaro wrote, we inspect before packaging to see more units, not spending time opening boxes. Yep. Stuart saying, haha, I literally just texted you about this now. I didn't see Stuart, but I did get another message of someone saying that they love my language because I swear a lot. I know, it's just me. What can I do? Kian, I can't remember whose turn it is, but I think that our next subject we actually already covered. So we'll move into the last one.
Sure.
Go for it, homie.
Is it me?
We'll talk about it together.
Well, is this one about packaging dimensions suited for Amazon?
Oh, well, it was about packaging regulations that we did cover that. I can talk about the packaging for dimensions. We were going to say that one of the things that we see a lot of people making mistakes on is not understanding. Actually, no, because there's some other stuff you wanted to talk about packaging. Okay. So let's talk about it, which was packaging. Regulations we spoke about, making sure that your product is regulated. I will just say, because I know what you're going to talk about, I'm not going to talk about the same thing, that when you're working on, I've seen many people, Stuart's watching us, he's one of the people, not that he made this mistake, but anyway, moving on, where they've gone in and not actually understood necessarily the Amazon tiers before honing down on their packaging size. So, sometimes it's literally that 1 inch can be another $6 into your FBA fees. And that's a lot of money going down the drain. So when it comes to packaging, you want to be really, really sure that you understand on an Amazon level. Right now, I'm specifically talking about Amazon. On an Amazon level, you want to make sure that you understand the tiers, the FBA tiers, so that you understand how big your product actually is. And you will talk about the other side of the packaging.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's super important is like as you start scaling this business, you kind of look at everything and you're like, okay, where can I save 1%? Where can I save here? Where can I save there? And for us, like where we had quite a big impact was really looking at the carton dimensions. Like, you know, you can choose like how many units that you have in an outer carton, whether it be 8 units or 12 units and stuff like that. And as a beginner, you don't really realize what's important and what's not. But as you scale and as you start to order container loads and you say, okay, well, in a 20-foot container, I've got about 28 cubic meters. What can I really fit in this 28 cubic meters? But then you realize the height of the container. And if your box height was like 50 centimeters, but you actually made it 48, then if it was 48, then you could have actually had one more layer in that container. And then that extra layer could have shipped you an extra, like, you know, 500 units free of charge, because before you were just shipping like air. And the same works with, and I've got like a spreadsheet formula that helps me calculate all of that sort of stuff. But the same works with palletizing as well. Like when your goods are unloaded from a container and wrapped onto a pallet, if we know our pallet dimensions are 100 by 120 centimeters and we make the base of our cartons like 60 by 40 centimeters, we know we can fill that pallet to the edge with product without there being any overspill. And then based on the pallet height, this is super important. Any 3PL warehouse that I work with, I always say, what is your pallet loading height? Someone will say 190 centimeters, someone will say 165. Everyone's a little bit different. And if I know the warehouse that I'm going into, the max pallet height is 1.9, then I'm going to make sure that the carton height will hit 1.9 so I can get the maximum amount of layers on that pallet. So when they charge you storage for a pallet in the warehouse, you've actually managed to get an extra layer there. So you almost get like, you know, depending on the size of your product, like an extra 36 or 50 products free of charge, free of storage charge on that pallet, because you optimized the carton dimensions. Now that's getting super technical, super geeky, but that's just something you have to look into as you scale and as you start to order full containers. That's something that really requires a lot of attention, because you can save a good 2%, 5% on your bottom line based on your carton dimensions.
I don't think it's only, first of all, it's a great point and an important one. I don't think it's only for when you scale. I think that it's an important point even when you're not at scale necessarily, because taking into consideration how much, you know, volume weight you're going to have can really impact on your cost of shipping. And I'm talking now on actually shipping the products, because in general, shipping, you know, is really expensive right now. So if you can get, you know, I'm talking now about packaging of the actual product. If you can get the primary packaging down and put in another 7 units per box, and that ends up saving you, you know, on many boxes, that can bring down your shipping cost, which is in today's logistics world, it can be a make or break. You know, I've got people that have reached out to me, be like, you know, Sharon, before the whole issues of logistics being so expensive, I was profitable, but right now I'm not really being profitable because shipping's just so expensive. And it's those little things that people don't think about. And one other thing about what you said, which just came to my mind, even though I kind of said it, but I'm just going to give an example. Sometimes people's boxes are way too big for their products, right? And that's exactly what we're talking about. And therefore you've got more volume in there than what you need to have, where you could have more products inside a carton, and that'll save you money. But not only that, like just an example is for example, blankets, right? A lot of people put like an insert on a blanket and they put it in an OPP bag, right? Sometimes just by having that shrink wrapped, it'll make it from being this big, right? And then you can fit another 15, 20 units inside of that carton, right? So things like that I think that like the dimensions and taking into consideration, you were talking about your carton sizes, and I'm more talking about like the primary packaging size can actually, I think from day one, save you a lot of money if you take that into consideration from the very beginning. So great tips. Now you can go on our last thing, and then we've got some questions here.
Sure. I would say the last point really is just understanding your customs code, your HTS codes, because whether you're shipping FOB, if you're doing it FOB, then your freight forwarder is going to declare your goods through customs for you. But if you're shipping it DDP, then your supplier is going to do it for you. And I've seen a lot of people's goods get held up at customs because they've done DDP shipments, but the supplier has used the wrong code. They've used a code which is lesser to pay less duty, but it wasn't a code which was relevant to the product. So if you ever ship DDP, always ask the supplier to confirm with you what is the HTS code that you'll be using to import these goods through customs. And then you want to check that. If you just type in like HTS code into Google, it'll tell you the website, which is like hts.gov.us or something like that. And you can basically just type in the code, check it, and make sure it makes sense. But you can also be quite smart and clever with the HTS codes as well. Like, and again, I think this is probably something you should pay attention to, like as you start to scale and stuff like that. Like, I'll give you a quick example, right? So I'm doing backpacks into the UK market. Importing a backpack into the UK is 2.7% import duty. Now, importing into the US was 17% before Trump put up all these tariffs. Then it went from 17 to 25 to 42. So the exact same product coming into the UK and the US is 42% and 2.7%, 40%. Like, that's crazy to me, right? But as I started to look into the HTS code website, I'm like, what can I do with these bags to lower the code while staying compliant, of course? And one thing I noticed, the bags which have protection on the outer have 0% duty. And what I mean by protection is if you're a motorcyclist and you fall off your bike, you want your bag to have some sort of hard shell protection. So like carbon fiber is that hard shell protection. So if I can put just one small patch of carbon fiber to the outer of the bag, which will be a little bit more expensive, I can save 42% on import duty. And it's compliant with customs. And I'm like, well, that's a neat way to save 42% by adding $1 to the unit cost of the product. But here's where we can save 42%. So that's really kind of getting an understanding of customs and HTS codes and what's compliant and what's not. And that's where you can make additional savings in your business as well. And one final thing I'd say about that is that going back to the example of 42% versus 2.7%, if you were always doing bags into the US market and then these tariffs just jump up to 42%, rather than trying to change the tariff, maybe change the country that you sell it in as well. You might say, well, the UK is only 2.7, so let me just open up an Amazon UK account and I'll sell the exact same product there, and you'll be much more profitable. So also use the import codes to look at different countries to see what would be a potential next market for you to open up.
Great tips. I just want to correct myself. See, it's so important to have Stuart here. Stuart's my other homie. I didn't mean shrink wrapped. I meant vacuum wrapped. Shrink wrapped is when you put, for example, like Coca-Cola in like on a tray, and then they shrink wrap it. I meant vacuum packed earlier. Thank you, Stuart, for correcting me. Regarding what we just said about HS codes, I'm very passionate about this subject as well, and that's actually interesting what you just said about the bags as well, because bags are one of the products that were hit a lot when it comes to tariffs. Not all bags. For bags specifically, as far as I know, it does depend on the zipper and many different things. So that's really interesting what you just said there. The one thing I will say in my experience with HS codes is that, I don't know if you're going to agree with me here, is that a lot of the times, actually I think you will, Chinese forwarders, most of the time, okay, it's mostly Chinese forwarders that do this, a lot of the time will play around with your HS code. And that's why they're giving you a really, really low shipping quote, because instead of declaring that you're selling a bag, which is, let's just say, and bags can get up to 48%. So let's just say you're on the 48% tier. They're saying that you sell a towel, which I don't know what the percentage on a towel was off the top of my head, but let's just pretend it's 2%.
Right, 12.
All right, 12%. There you go. Kian knows. So let's just say it's 12%, right? Or let's just say a product that's 2%, okay? So they're giving you a really, really good quote because they're lying about what you're actually selling. So then you go to a very reputable company like Unicargo, for example, and then they give you a quote that's twice as much. And you're like, holy shit, this company's trying to, scam me because this forwarder is good. And they just don't understand that. We'll go back and have a look at, are they declaring the right product? And this can be a really big problem if your container, for example, was to actually be checked, right? Because sometimes they do random inspections. And if they open up and see that, you lied about what's actually inside, it's a really, really big problem. So when it comes to HS codes, apart from everything that you've said, which is really important to understand from day one, because a lot of people don't know to calculate into their profit margins tariffs, right? I think that it's also an important thing to make sure that I know that it can be very tempting to play around with an HS code in order to bring tariffs down, right? And unless you're working with a company that really knows what they're doing, I recommend people don't make too many changes. Like if you're selling a hat, don't say you're selling, a pen, like don't be dramatic. So that's my 2 cents. What do you have to say about that?
I agree.
You agree?
And that's why we should ask the forwarder if they are shipping it themselves, if they are doing a DDP, what HTS code are you declaring at customs, just so that, and you never know what they'll actually use. But if it's important to remember that if you do DDP and the supplier ships it and the goods get held at customs, it's the supplier's name which is on the customs clearance, so it's up to them to get it out of customs, and there might be a fine involved for using the wrong code. But if they don't want to pay that fine, well, you didn't have to pay for it, but you also don't get your goods. So that's why it's important for you to have control over this process.
And that's if that's the suppliers, but sometimes it could be a Chinese forwarder, and they may not give a shit about you, right? Your supplier usually will care about you, and they usually won't do that kind of stuff. But if it's just a random forwarder that got caught, right, you can kiss your stock goodbye. And sometimes it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, I mean, not hundreds, because if you're working hundreds of thousands, you're probably working with a good, reputable forwarder, I hope, anyway. But it can be tens of thousands of dollars of stock, So, all right, we got some questions. This is a long one. I'm going to have to go up here so people can still see me. Okay. Wei Yi said, hey, guys, is there a big issue working with trading companies rather than manufacturers directly? I've approached a few suppliers on a product request, and many of them are unable to accommodate the custom design and packaging with the low MOQ. Either that, or they do not have the right materials for what I need. The only company who would answer to my request is a trading company with an address in Shanghai and the quote FOB in Qingdao. How do you pronounce that?
Qingdao.
Thank you.
Qingdao have amazing beer, by the way. If you ever go to China, have Qingdao beer, or if you've seen a bar, go for it. It's so nice.
When I go to China, it's only going to be wherever you are, and you'll take me to wherever I should go. All right.
I'm going to organize a China tour quite soon.
I'll be there. Go for it, Kian. This is okay. You go first.
Cool. So to answer the first part, against working for a trading company or a factory, I work with both. I think there's this misconception that trading companies will give you a higher price. Sometimes they do, sometimes they're a little bit cheaper. And really sometimes we have to work with trading companies because the factory doesn't have an export license, which is required to send the goods out of China. Sometimes the trading company will give you more flexibility, like this situation where maybe you can't find a factory which does it directly, but trading company has relationships with many different companies, and then they can then find that factory for you on your behalf. And remember, yes, trading companies have to make a margin, but that's not always from you. Sometimes they take a cut from the factory for bringing them the order as well. So sometimes they can actually give you the same price of what a factory gives you as well. Sometimes trading companies also hold on to stock as well, so they can give you low MOQs and a bit of flexibility. But ultimately, if you're working in large scale, large turnover, it's better to work with the factory directly. But I still do big volumes of trading companies as well, maybe because of the quality of service that you can get as well. So either or, every situation is different. But I feel like in this case, you probably just have to ask more suppliers. It's not, hey, let me find a factory over a trading company. It's let me just reach out to more sources to see who's able to accommodate your design. But the other thing is that you said custom design, and whenever you have something custom, that doesn't normally translate into a low MOQ, because whenever something's custom, it requires an MOQ. Because let's say, for example, if you're doing a textile product, like a backpack, for example, right, and you want to do it in just a normal standard black color, well, they have 600D polyester in black on fabric rolls in stock in their factory, because that's just a repeatable fabric that they use for multiple different products. But if you have this custom goldfish pattern that is only for your brand, well, they have to go and then print that, and the print roll is minimum 1,000 yards on 1.5 meters roll worth of fabric. So they'll calculate with the dimensions of your bag and this goldfish pattern and the minimum fabric roll that we have to purchase, we have to make 900 bags. So your MOQ is 900. So it depends how custom you are into what type of MOQ that you will get. But if you can be flexible on your design or on your pattern, you can just say to the manufacturer directly, what materials are you holding in stock, which I can get a low MOQ of. Then you might find that they'll have something similar to what you want, and then you get that lower MOQ.
Great tips there. I agree 100% when it comes to there is a misconception about working with trading companies. The one thing that I just reread her question. Sometimes when you read the question yourself, you don't necessarily understand what you read out. So I just reread the question. The only thing that I will add to that is she did write here, the custom design and packaging with a low MOQ. Sometimes what is actually holding up you from being able to get a lower MOQ is actually the packaging. Most packaging companies, in my experience, usually have a very specific MOQ, which is usually around 1,000 units when you're doing it through a supplier. And sometimes it's just a matter of, you can get, let's just say an order of 500 units, but because the supplier they work with for the packaging has an MOQ of 1,000, they're therefore telling you that you've got an MOQ of 1,000, when really, if you were to pay for 1,000 packaging, like 1,000 of the packages, you could still get 500 of the units of whatever it is that you're making. I don't know if that makes sense. I hope I explained that properly. What I'm trying to say is sometimes it's the packaging that requires the higher MOQ. And then there's different ways around it. Either you can pay extra, or that you can actually buy the 1,000 MOQ, for example, and leave the 500 units with the packet with the company. That's another,
and use it for your next order
option. And use it obviously for your next order. There was something else I wanted to say, but I can't remember. But great tips. Great tips. What's the best way to get in touch with you, Kian? I've sent you a text on a messenger a month ago, but didn't receive a response. Can I answer this before you answer it, Kian?
Sure.
Okay. So something I want people to take into consideration is that we get messages, especially Kian, like 50 messages a day, right? So the best way to contact Kian, and because Kian won't say that, so I'm going to say it. The best way to contact Kian is to book a coaching call with him, because then you're actually going to get his time, because he works so freaking hard throughout the day. And, it's just impossible to answer back everyone. So now, Kian, how's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And that's actually something like important to address as well, because like sometimes, like anyone in this industry which speaks publicly can get overwhelmed with the amount of messages to receive, because we make ourselves like so accessible on many different platforms, right? So on YouTube, you get so many different comments. Yeah, you leave your email address there. So many people reach out by email, on Facebook, on Instagram, on WhatsApp, on LinkedIn. And it's almost like message fatigue, that you get to a stage where you don't even want to look at any messages, because 100%. As soon as you look at the message, then you start thinking about how you have to answer it. And I know I can answer it. I can see a problem that someone's got with QC or something like that, but it's going to take me about 10 or 15 minutes to explain it. But I can't do that 30 times.
For every single person. Absolutely not.
Person. And it's like, and it honestly breaks my heart, because you're like, I can help this person, but I don't have the time to help this person. So that's why I've made like one-on-one coaching available for someone who really, really wants help. You can book a coaching call, and then it goes directly into my calendar with a link, with a Zoom call, and then we can just go in and discuss it. So I will try to get back to you, like whenever I'm like able to. I go into my messages and I read and try and reply to as many as I can. I do about 10 a day. So I will try and get back to you, and apologies for that.
Yeah. I think it's important just for people to also understand that we also get, because I go through the same thing. I have a rule, and I didn't used to have this rule, but it's to respect my time. If it takes me more than 5 minutes to answer you, book a call, right? That's sort of my rule. Andrew said, I'll be there tomorrow. He's talking about China. Andrew is a pilot, and he'll be in China tomorrow.
In the cargo?
Yeah. Stuart said, pay for 1,000 packages, use 500 now, 500 later. Yep, that's exactly what I was saying. I really hope that I didn't butcher the name, said thanks for the tips. And Ritter said, thanks for the answer. And be your own 20 said, hey, Sharon. All right. Kian, every time you come on, I'm just blown away by the amount of information, homie. Thank you for coming on. You're the
Thanks for
best.
having me. I love coming on, and it's a great show to be a part of. I feel like I know the community really well, and hopefully we can all get together and meet in person one day as well. But thanks very much for having me.
It's crazy because you and I are like really good friends. We've never actually met face to face.
I know.
It's so insane.
Yeah.
All right. If anyone wants to reach out to you, find you, watch your content, where can they find you?
Sure, yeah. I put out regular videos on YouTube, so if you want to hear more about sourcing.
Hey guys, so hope you enjoyed that video. If you want to see more content like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel because we've got loads more videos all about how to get a low MOQ, how to get your first sample, how to find the best suppliers on Alibaba. Plenty of videos all like this, which will appear on this channel. So make sure you subscribe if you're not already. Now, if you would like to work with me on a one-to-one basis, you can book a coaching call, which can be booked from the link down below, which will also be linked in the description as well. And in the description of this video, there's also going to be a bunch of discounts for you as well, for some different tools and masterminds and all that sort of stuff that I'm a part of as well. And if you aren't a part of the Facebook group, make sure you join the Sourcing with Kian Facebook group as well, which is an awesome community which we have built all together. And also, if you're feeling a little bit more social and you're on Instagram as well, make sure you connect with me there, where I am Kian_JG. Send me a DM, say hello, say what's up. Thank you so much, and I will see you guys on the next video.